landslide, no escape from reality.
This is the story of how one of the most successful songs in rock history was nearly killed by the very people who were supposed to promote it. Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody now stands as one of the greatest progressive rock recordings ever made, pulling over 3 billion streams on Spotify alone. But back in 1975, EMI Records told the band it would never be a hit, that radio stations wouldn't touch it, and that releasing it as a single would destroy their career. What we're unpacking today is how a 6-minute operatic rock epic that shattered every convention became not just a hit, but a cultural force that's claimed the Christmas #1 spot twice, topped the charts across 4 different years, and emerged as the most streamed song from the entire 20th century. What made Bohemian Rhapsody so radical compared to everything else flooding radio stations in 1975 comes down to a few jaw-dropping choices. Freddie Mercury crafted a song clocking in at 5 minutes and 55 seconds, nearly double the length of a standard single, and stripped it of any chorus. The structure read like a 6-part suite instead: an intro, a ballad segment, a guitar solo, an operatic passage, a hard rock section, and a reflective coda. 7 years of gestation preceded the actual recording. Chris Smith, a friend and keyboard player in Smile, the band that came before Queen, watched Mercury developing fragments of the song back in the late 1960s, and that opening line, "Mama just killed a man," existed from those early days. Mercury even had a working title ready, the Cowboy Song. Friends recall that Mercury was double-jointed and positioned a piano as the headboard of his bed, which meant when inspiration struck in his dreams, he could reach up and back behind his head to play whatever ideas were flowing through his mind. Scraps of paper covered in his own peculiar musical notations stayed taped to his keyboard, a visual map of the song taking shape. Brian May recalled the moment Mercury finally brought the completed concept to the band in 1975. It was all in Freddie's mind. He sang a guide vocal at the time, but he had all his harmonies written out, and it was really just a question of doing it. EMI Records didn't just express concern about Bohemian Rhapsody as Queen's next single, they actively fought against it. The objection was brutally simple: too long for radio play. Radio stations in 1975 were built around 3-minute songs with clear choruses and predictable structures they could slot into their formats without disruption, and EMI predicted the song would tank. They pushed Queen to release either "You're My Best Friend" or "The Prophet Song" as the lead single from A Night at the Opera instead. The conflict ran deeper than just song length. Queen had left Trident Studios and their original production team, seeking more creative control, which only added to the tension with their label. Freddie Mercury's memory of those conversations cut straight to the bone. The radios didn't really like it initially because it was too long, and the record companies said you can't market it that way. And after me having virtually put the 3 songs together, they wanted me to sort of slice it up again, so I said no way. They said nobody would play it, it's too long, and I just said it either goes out in its entirety or not at all. Leslie Ann Jones's biography of Mercury captured the industry reaction. EMI and the industry in general voiced misgivings. Radio stations wondered what the hell they were supposed to do with a 6-minute single. The skepticism ran deeper than the label's boardroom. John Deacon, Queen's own bassist, privately feared that releasing Bohemian Rhapsody would prove to be the greatest error of judgment in the band's career, and when Elton John first heard the song and learned it would be the first single, his response was immediate. "Are you fucking mad?" Opposition surrounded them from every direction, but the band had one secret weapon waiting in the wings, a DJ named Kenny Everett.
Take my breath away.
Kenny Everett hosted a show on Capital Radio in London, one of the country's most popular programs, and happened to be a close personal friend of Freddie Mercury. Queen leaked a copy of Bohemian Rhapsody to Everett on reel-to-reel tape before the official release, asking him to keep it under wraps, and Everett promised he would never play it without permission. What unfolded next was either brilliant guerrilla marketing or Everett genuinely couldn't help himself, probably both. Rather than playing the full song, Everett started dropping snippets and fragments on his show, teasing his massive audience by telling them Queen had given him the biggest song of the year and that it was going to be #1 for centuries. One weekend changed everything. Everett played the song 14 times in 2 days, and the song still hadn't been officially released. Monday morning brought floods of customers into record stores asking for a song that wasn't even available for purchase yet. Producer Roy Thomas Baker captured the absurdity. It was a strange situation where radio on both sides of the Atlantic was breaking a record that the record company said would never get airplay. Paul Drew of the RKO radio network started playing the song across their American stations, mirroring Everett's move, and in the UK BBC Radio 1's Diddy David Hamilton, whose show reached 16 million daily listeners, also championed it. Hamilton's memory of first hearing it stayed sharp. I remember thinking that it was totally different from any pop record I'd ever heard before. It was innovative, operatic. It soared and swooped and got under your skin. By October 31st, 1975, when Bohemian Rhapsody officially hit shelves, the demand was already there, and EMI's concerns about radio airplay had been completely bypassed by the very medium they were worried about. The recording process matched the song's unconventional nature in every way. Recording began on August 24, 1975, at Rockfield Studio 1 near Monmouth, Wales, and the entire process consumed 3 weeks while bouncing between 5 different studios: Rockfield, Roundhouse, SARM East, Scorpion, and Wessex. 3 weeks went into just the operatic section. Producer Roy Thomas Baker and engineer Mike Stone put it plainly. That section alone took about 3 weeks to record, which in 1975 was the average time spent on a whole album. 180 separate vocal overdubs built that section. Mercury, May, and Taylor sang for 10 to 12 hours per day, stacking layer upon layer of harmonies, and the recording required nearly 200 tracks total, but the analog recording technology of 1975 only allowed for 24-track tape recorders. 8 generations of 24-track tape became necessary, bouncing tracks down repeatedly until the original recordings were barely audible. Baker recalled the madness. Bohemian Rhapsody was totally insane, but we enjoyed every minute of it. We had to record it in 3 separate units. We did the whole beginning bit, then the whole middle bit, and then the whole end. It was complete madness. The middle part started off being just a couple of seconds, but Freddie kept coming in with more Galileos, and we kept on adding to the opera section, and it just got bigger and bigger. We never stopped laughing. The physical tape itself started wearing out from the process, and Baker remembered holding it up to light and being able to see through it. The music had practically vanished. Brian May stood at the back of the control room during playback and thought to himself, "You just knew you were listening to a big page in history." 40,000 British pounds went into making A Night at the Opera, the modern equivalent of approximately 500,000 US dollars, and the album earned the designation of most expensive single ever recorded at the time of its release, with a large chunk of that cost flowing directly into Bohemian Rhapsody. Paranoia about their unfinished work being stolen ran so deep that Queen labeled rough recordings as the work of less popular bands and artists, which means no early versions or rough cuts of Bohemian Rhapsody are known to exist today.
Life had just begun, but
A new problem emerged. The song was too complex to perform live on television, and they couldn't appear in person on Top of the Pops, the UK's most important music show, because they were on tour. Roger Taylor's feelings about Top of the Pops were clear. "We did everything we possibly could to avoid appearing on Top of the Pops. It was the most boring day known to man." Watching Pan's People, the dance troupe that typically performed songs when artists couldn't appear, interpret their song held zero appeal for the band. November 10, 1975, became the day Queen filmed what would become one of the most significant music videos in history. Director Bruce Gowers shot it at Elstree Studios, where the band was already rehearsing for their tour, and the entire shoot took 4 hours while editing took another 5 because they needed it broadcast that same week. The budget sat somewhere between £3,500 and £4,500. That iconic visual of the 4 band members' faces arranged in a diamond formation drew from the cover of their Queen II album, which had been released 18 months earlier, and the special effects, including that cascading face effect, came from pointing the camera at the monitor during recording, not through editing. Visual feedback created the magic. Top of the Pops aired the video in November 1975, and while it wasn't the first music video ever made, it became the first promotional video that sat at the center of a song's marketing strategy. The Guardian later wrote that it ensured videos would henceforth be a mandatory tool in the marketing of music, paving the way for MTV and the music video era that would arrive 6 years later.
I get ever so lonely from time to time.
EMI's prediction about Bohemian Rhapsody being the greatest error of judgment in Queen's career turned out to be spectacularly wrong. The UK chart debut came in at number 47. 4 weeks later, it was number 1, and it stayed there for 9 consecutive weeks, while becoming the Christmas number 1 of 1975. By the end of January 1976, sales had passed 1 million copies. Queen had struggled to break through in the United States, but Bohemian Rhapsody became their first top 10 hit, peaking at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. ABBA's Mamma Mia knocked Bohemian Rhapsody off the number 1 spot in the UK in 1976, which carries a certain irony considering the lyrics of Queen's song. The story gets better. When Freddie Mercury died on November 24, 1991, Bohemian Rhapsody was re-released as a double A-side with These Are the Days of Our Lives, and it shot straight back to number 1 for 5 weeks, while becoming the Christmas number 1 of 1991. This resurgence was further boosted by the comedy film Wayne's World, which featured the song in its iconic car scene, introducing Queen to a whole new generation of fans. No other song in UK history has been Christmas number 1 twice with the same recording. The Brit Award for Best Single went to the song twice, in 1977 and again in 1992. And it received 2 Grammy nominations in 1976 before being inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2004, cementing its status as one of the most important recordings in music history. Sales of 2.62 million copies made it the 3rd best-selling single of all time in the UK. Diamond status came in the United States with over 10 million sales, and globally, it moved over 6 million copies. 4 different years saw the song reach number 1, 1975, 1976, 1991, and 1992. December 10, 2018 arrived 43 years after the song's release, bringing an announcement that Bohemian Rhapsody had surpassed 1.6 billion streams globally across all platforms, making it the most streamed song from the 20th century and the most streamed classic rock song of all time. Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit, Guns N' Roses' Sweet Child O' Mine, a-ha's Take On Me, and Journey's Don't Stop Believin' all fell behind. Brian May responded with characteristic enthusiasm. So the river of rock music has metamorphosed into streams. Very happy that our music is still flowing to the max. Recent counts show Bohemian Rhapsody has pulled over 3 billion streams on Spotify alone, while Queen ranks number 44 on Spotify's most listened to artists globally with 40.3 million monthly listeners. A new generation discovered the song in 2018 through a film that shared its name.
So please don't go.
Rami Malek starred as Freddie Mercury in the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, which hit theaters in October and November of 2018 with a production budget of $50 to $55 million. The worldwide box office delivered $910.8 million, making it the highest-grossing musical biopic of all time and the 6th highest-grossing film of 2018. 4 Oscars came at the 91st Academy Awards: Best Actor for Rami Malek, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing, and the film also earned a Best Picture nomination. Streaming numbers for the song got a significant boost from the film's release, introducing Queen to yet another generation of fans, and according to financial reports, Queen Productions Limited earned £38.92 million, about $53.5 million, from royalties in fiscal year 2021. The biopic's long-tail effect continues generating approximately $53 million in annual revenues. Freddie Mercury never explained what Bohemian Rhapsody was actually about throughout all of this success. Kenny Everett heard him call it random rhyming nonsense, while Mercury described it to others as about relationships and added, "It's one of those songs which has such a fantasy feel about it. I think people should just listen to it, think about it, and then make up their own minds as to what it says to them. Brian May offered some insight. Freddie was a very complex person, flippant and funny on the surface, but he concealed insecurities and problems in squaring up his life with his childhood. He never explained the lyrics, but I think he put a lot of himself into that song. Music scholar Sheila Whiteley suggested that Mercury was at a turning point when he wrote it, having lived with Mary Austin for 7 years while just embarking on his first relationship with a man. The mama in the song might have referred to Mary, and Mamma Mia Let Me Go might have been about wanting to break away. Mercury took the true meaning to his grave, and perhaps that's part of why the song continues resonating with new listeners more than 50 years later.
Your love, you take my breath away.
EMI Records told Queen that Bohemian Rhapsody was too long, too weird, too uncommercial, that radio wouldn't play it, and that it would be a career-ending mistake. Freddie Mercury's response was simple. It either goes out in its entirety or not at all. Roger Taylor's memory stayed clear. I always believed in Bohemian Rhapsody from the start. The first time Fred played us his idea for it, I remember thinking, oh, this is something special. And it was. Mercury himself put it this way. We knew it was very risky, but we had so much confidence in that song. I did anyway. I felt, underneath it all, that if it was successful, it would earn a lot of respect. That confidence, combined with some brilliant guerrilla marketing from Kenny Everett and a 4-hour music video that changed the industry forever, turned what should have been a commercial disaster into one of the most successful and influential recordings in music history. 3 billion streams and counting, Christmas #1 twice, chart topper across 4 different years, a billion-dollar movie, new generations discovering the genius of Queen and Freddie Mercury. That's what the song the record label almost killed has become. Bohemian Rhapsody proved that the music industry doesn't always know best, that audiences are smarter and more adventurous than record executives give them credit for, and that sometimes the riskiest creative choices are the ones that change everything. The song that almost never was released has become immortal.